accidentally cosplaying Freddy Krueger. Oh dear, never mind. Hello and welcome back to Grumpy Old Crone with me, Annie, where I will be moaning about things that don't matter very much for about half an hour or so. Right, the first thing straight out the gate that I've got to address is a huge gratitude to everybody who watched my video last week and who subscribed. I've had like this vast jump in subscriber numbers. Yes, I did lose quite a few, as I expected I would, but oh my god, I've gained so many more. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to see everybody here. I've got to say, I'm not, as I stated there and then, I'm not a political animal. I mostly make, you know, kind of educational, mildly amusing, whinging kind of a video. And I hope that that's enough of your thing that you're prepared to stay. Thank you so much for joining me, and just seeing that wave of solidarity that rolled out around the world. We had witches from Australia, from New Zealand, obviously from America, from all over Europe, right from the north, right down to the south and the east. And I'm just so grateful. It shows that we are absolutely of one mind and strong together. There were, of course, a few dissenting comments. Some of the more sweary ones I've left in the filter. The rest of them I've kind of left there for the general amusement of everybody who's passing by. My favourite one from last night was the one who said, "You're not a witch. You're just after attention." Well, obviously I am. I'm on YouTube. I'm on YouTube making videos for people to watch. Obviously I want people to watch them. I didn't get that one. But anyway, on we go. So first up, in the usual format, if you've not been here before, I usually do it in 3 chunks. I'll do my stupid witchy aesthetic. It's not serious, don't worry. Then I'll do my meat and potatoes, and then we'll have a little positive bit at the end. So that's the plan for today. On we go with witchy aesthetic. Right, so as you've probably gathered by now, I'm not a very vain person. I'm not very good at makeup, and I don't really care what I wear. Most of the time, I have like a few key rules for dressing myself first thing in the morning. In fact, I have 3 key rules. The first one is it clean? The second one is, will it keep me warm and dry in whatever the prevailing weather happens to be? And in England, that can change quite a lot. And thirdly, are children likely to laugh and point at me when I go out in public? And I'm pretty good at the first 2. The third one, I would like to say, not quite so good. As anyone who's on any of my social medias will probably have picked up, week before last, I accidentally went to work, walking through my city centre, accidentally cosplaying Freddy Krueger. Yeah, it wasn't a good look. It was cold and it was wet, so I got like my big lined fleecy stripy jumper, and because I don't like the rain going on my glasses, I picked up a wide brimmed hat, and my gloves that I use for everything I nicked off Mr. Grumpy Old Crone, and they're black leather, and I was feeling good, you know. I was tromping off to work, and all of a sudden this white van pulled up alongside me. Now, I don't know if white van man is a thing that happens around the world. Certainly a thing that happens in England. They are very much driven, white vans, by a certain type of man. Not all of them, but many of them. And he pulled up alongside me and he shouted at me out of the window. And you know, I was feeling pretty good about that, because I thought what he shouted was, "Hey you, ready and looking good." And I thought, oh, obviously he thinks I look quite good. You know, I'm 54. People don't shout at me in the street for looking good very often. However, I do have this, and I think it's quite common, this kind of like mental processing thing whereby I'm a little bit deaf, and so my brain will fill in what I think is there, and then maybe a minute or so later my brain will actually catch up and go, oh, actually, no, what it meant was this. And so it was after he'd driven down the road and it was at the traffic lights, like I don't know, a quarter of a mile away. I realised that what he'd actually shouted out of the window was, 1, 2, Freddie's coming for you. At which point I looked at myself and I thought, oh shit, he's quite right. Accidentally cosplaying Freddy Krueger. Oh dear, never mind. At least all my little old ladies in the job I was doing that day were very amused by it. So, you know, hidden silver linings, I guess. Right. Anyway, and somehow, that was not the most disastrous personal appearance thing that happened to me last week. Back in the good old days of LiveJournal, does anybody out there remember LiveJournal? Was it just me? I loved LiveJournal. These were in the days before it got taken over by Russian spy bots. Anyway, and I used to live and die on LiveJournal. I wrote loads and loads on there. And I had like this semi-regular series of articles that I used to write called I Do These Things So That You Don't Have To. And they were mostly about some of the more disastrous personal accidents that I'd managed to inflict upon myself throughout my day-to-day living. I did have one notorious one, which one day I will do on here, called Bambi in a Bucket, which is quite traumatic even to think about. And I might need a very, very large drink of something to tackle Bambi in a Bucket. It wasn't good. If you've heard Bambi in a Bucket, you'll know what I'm talking about. But still, another day, not now. But I haven't done anything that really required a I did it so that you don't have to kind of a thing recently, until Thursday night. Yeah, so I had an idea, as you do, for a handy tip that I discovered a little while back that I thought would be a great thing to share on YouTube Shorts. And in order to film it, I needed something out of like the little cupboards that I keep stuff in my living room, which is underneath, if you happen to have looked on my social medias, it's underneath the amethyst geode of dubious femininity. So it's the cupboard that stands on. Now, I've got wood floors and the cupboard slides out quite easily. So the fact that I've got 2 pillar candles burning in hurricane lamps there didn't, and you know what I mean by hurricane lamp? Kind of like a open glass, tall glass dish, and they're in there. So the fact that I got them burning in there, I didn't think was going to be a big issue. So I very carefully kind of like slid out the cupboards, and now I've got wood floors, cupboard slides. It came out, nothing fell off. Well done, Annie, I thought. Opened the cupboard, got out the thing I need, shut the cupboard, went to push it back, and as I push it back, it jutted a little bit. Now, I've got like this little, it's quite phallic, little gnome that sits by the side of my geode of dubious femininity, and he kind of and dropped off and down the back. And I thought, oh, I better just reach over and pick him up. I thought, because if he's down there, I'll forget he's there, and then in a week's time, I'll think, oh, where's my little phallic gnome dude? And I'll forget that he's there. So that's what I did. I reached over and I was groping around, and I just about got him when all of a sudden I smelt something terrible, and I heard a sound like this. And it was at that point, dear viewers, that I realised that I had flopped a chunk of my hair into a hurricane light and set fire to my head. All I can say is that I leapt around the living room, patting my head, shouting, shit, 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 attempting to put my head out. And I did put it out, no damage to me. However, I am now missing a chunk of hair at the back of my head. Thankfully, long hair is quite forgiving of that sort of thing. So it's not a huge chunk, but all I can say is that it stank really, really badly. If you want proof, I did actually take a picture of like a little bit of it, because literally as I took I kind of went like that, checked that the flames were out, and some of it was in my hand. So I took a picture of it because, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know why I took a picture of it. I just did. So probably to show you, actually. So here we go. That's what I managed to do to my head. So my witchy aesthetic tip to you today is, if you need to reach over a candle to get something that's behind it, and you have long hair, dangly jewellery, or slightly woofy clothes on, put out the candles first. Right? It saves a lot of stress, a lot of leaping around, a lot of burnt hair, and it saves your living room smelling of burnt hair. I did briefly consider lighting an incense stick to try and cover the smell, but you know what it's like? You just end up with a whole house that smells, instead of a house that smells of burnt hair, you end up with a house that smells of burnt hair and sandalwood, which is not necessarily the greatest combination. So yeah, I recommend you don't do that. I do these things so that you don't have to. And with that, we are going to move on to, I bet you're quite relieved now, we are going to move on to meats and 2 potatoes. So what I want to talk about today is something that I'm kind of on a little bit of a soapbox about, actually, if you catch me on a good day. So I'm very obviously into the occult, into spiritualism. I love a good ghost story. Love a good ghost story. And in fact, if you kind of hop back in my channel, you'll find that round about Samhain, I've done a few like little vaguely uneasy kind of experiences that I've had over the years. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about that just a little bit. So I wasn't the kind of child who imagined a lot of stuff. I never really had imaginary friends. I never saw ghosts. And my childhood home was the most unhaunted, warm, happy place you could possibly imagine. In fact, I kind of regretted that a little bit because when I lost my parents, and I lived in the same home from when I was like 2, right through to the point that my family and I had to sell it after my parents passed. My dad passed first, and then my mum passed a few years afterwards, both of them actually in that house. And, you know, I'd be lying if I said I didn't hope that that house was a little bit haunted by them. Because I spent a lot of time there alone sorting out effects and what have you, as you do when a parent passes. And I really, really wanted it to be haunted because I just really wanted to see them again. They were great parents. I love them very, very much. And I really, really wanted to see them again. And I didn't. And it remained the most unhaunted, warm, welcoming, lovely house. Long after we passed it on to the next people who are now bringing up their family, and I'm sure being warm, welcome, happy and loved in that house in their turn. Frankly, quite disappointing. But anyway, I have lived in places that have had kind of weird or odd vibes, and I have experienced places that I genuinely believe and, well, kind of know to be haunted. So the first house that I stayed in when I was a student down south was really weird. It was, none of us liked being alone in the house. And there was a particularly bad energy. It was like a standard semi-detached house. And there was a really bad energy when you came in the front door and you faced a set of stairs. And it was like this cold vortex that kind of followed you up the stairs and along the hallway. And it was really scary. You could feel it. The temperature dropped by maybe 5 or 6 degrees. And it felt, anybody who's old enough and in England, and this is quite a narrow kind of like thing, if you watch the Adventure Game, which is kind of like a weird TV program from like the early 80s. There was like this white vortex that used to chase people around, like a big chessboard sort of thing. It was like that. You could feel something spinning and white and cold, and it was just very nasty. So bedtimes for all of us in that house used to be run up the stairs as fast as you can before this thing caught you. Run along, run into your bedroom, slam the door. And that was fine because I was young. I was fit and I didn't have the bladder of a hamster, which obviously as a middle-aged woman I have now. Midnight loo trips, totally a thing. So we'd been in this house for about 8 months or so, and we figured out that one of my friend's mothers was a psychic, so we asked her if she'd come and visit. And she came. She was a lovely, really interesting lady. Tea, cake, and about halfway through the evening, my housemate Alison asked if she could sense anything. She said that we thought this place was haunted, and the lady, her name was Sandra, very lovely lady, kind of sat there and she concentrated, and then all of a sudden, it was the weirdest thing. I have no words to describe this, but it was like I was in somebody else's memories. I could feel what I was wearing. I could see where I was. I could feel their thoughts. I was that person, completely there. I was no longer in my body in my living room being Annie. It was a very strange situation. And I was like this little girl, maybe 7, 8, 9, something like that. I was wearing like one of these nylon night dresses. Do you Anybody who remembers nylon night dresses? Don't turn over too fast in bed or you light up like a Van de Graaff generator. But still, she was wearing like this nylon night dress. And she had been told to go to bed and nobody was tucking her in. She was going to bed on her own. And she went to bed, I had the knowledge, on her own every single night. Nobody ever came and tucked her in. Nobody accompanied her up the stairs. And she had this completely irrational fear, because as I've said, the front door was at the bottom of the stairs. She had this irrational fear that this like monster hand was going to come through the letterbox and grab her and drag her out through the letterbox. It didn't happen. It wasn't real. But her fear, her childhood fear, was that would happen. And it became really real for her. And what happened was this absolute terror, night after night after night, kind of imprinted itself on the space. Stone tape theory, if you believe that. I do. Having experienced this, I absolutely do believe stone tape. And all of a sudden, like that, I was back and I was me and I was in the living room surrounded by my housemates and Sandra. And I explained what I'd experienced. And Sandra said, yeah, it's not a ghost. It's just the remains of fear. And knowing that there was nothing I needed to be scared about, all of a sudden there was nothing coming for me. It was just a little girl having been really, really scared. So I stopped being scared of it. And the instant we stopped feeding into that and we knew that it wasn't some big bad gribbly thing that was coming for us, actually we were fine. There was nothing wrong with that at all. People are super quick to say that anything that they cannot explain that happens in a house is a haunting. I lay it at the feet of books and media that you know, The Conjuring. Everything tells you that it's probably a ghost. And you know what? I kind of think they're wrong. If you've watched this channel before, you might have caught one of my previous videos, which is about working with house spirits. And yeah, I have house spirit here. I work with them a lot. Now, if you don't believe in ghosts, you're probably sitting there going, house spirits, that's a load of tosh as well. And that's fine. Everybody is allowed to believe what they want to believe based on their own experiences throughout life and how they interpreted those. Me, personally, absolutely believe in house spirits. Also absolutely believe in ghosts, but there we go. So, house spirits like to be recognised. They like to help, but they won't do everything. So, if the residents of a Domovoy's home are dirty or untidy or they hoard stuff, then the Domovoy or the Bubach or the house spirits, whatever you care to call it, they can get really, really angry because they feel that their home is not being respected. And when they get angry, they'll start to try and grab your attention. They'll run around the place. They'll move things. They'll create a bit of havoc. They want attention. People have moved into their home and they are completely being ignored and they are being disrespected. And it tends to happen in a certain set of circumstances. So either a new family has just moved in, or the house is really, really untidy and or disordered, and or the house is dirty and unloved and in a poor state of repair. Those, I find, are kind of the things that will trigger a Domovoy or a bubach or a house spirit faster than anything else that you care to know. And the problem is that modern media, particularly films, will tell you that if something goes bump in the night, then it's a ghost, which will lead to them getting an exorcism or a blessing. Now, imagine that you are living in your home, you're quite happy, it's a nice home, and all of a sudden somebody else moves in. You've got housemates, and those housemates ignore you. They make your living environment messy and dirty and unpleasant, and they make you feel really uncomfortable in your own home. And then they call a load of really heavy muscle bailiffs to chuck you out. Would you be cross? I know I would be cross. I would be very angry about that. It's my home. Sod off. You know, it's, that's not good. I'd start to do things like throwing stuff about and bullying the kids. Try to get them to move out. It's your house, get them out. You could have some nice neighbours, some nice house sharers. Get rid of the horrible ones. And exercising a house when you're dealing with a Domovoy or a genius loci is a really, really bad move. It's like trying to crack a walnut with a huge sledgehammer and missing the walnut every single time, cracking great holes in the floor and the walls as you go. Always try to make peace first. It's the first thing I do when I move into a house, is I will make a little bit of an offering to whatever spirit is already there. So a little bit of milk, a little bit of honey, talk to it, let it know that you're there, that you mean well. And with me, I always take ashes from my old hearth to my new hearth to awaken a Domovoy, blend a Domovoy, just make sure that there is a spirit present in the house that is happy to work with me. And it's like a protective home spirit. Even just a little bit of talking to the house will help. Just acknowledging that there is a spirit of the house there will make all of the difference. They want to work with you. Really key, if you can, don't let the bad feeling build up. It's way easier to start this kind of relationship on a good footing to start with, rather than try to make up for a whole load of bad mistakes that have already happened. So go in and right off the bat, little bit of milk, little bit of honey, talk to your house, tell it that you're happy to be there. Don't thank it. Thanks, never good. But just acknowledge that it's there, that you want to work with it, that you welcome it, and that you hope that it welcomes you in return. And have you ever wondered why some people return to their haunted houses like years later, hugely haunted houses, and they'll talk to subsequent residents, and the subsequent residents will say, no, there's never been a problem. I don't. Surely, if there's a ghost, that ghost will have haunted all of the people afterwards. But very often they'll say no, because it was never actually a ghost in the first place. I reckon. I have no proof, obviously, but I reckon never a ghost in the first place. It was a really pissed off house spirit, genius loci. The people who were haunted treated it badly, and so it acted up. The new family who came in may have just lived differently, been neater, been tidier, maybe accepted that there was a spirit there, or spoken to the house, or said really, really nice things about the house. You know, what a lovely house. How lucky we are to be here. We're really pleased. Isn't it wonderful? That kind of stuff will make a bubach feel really comfortable. Okay, and that's what you want to do. How can you tell the difference? It's kind of a hard one to quantify, really. I know, but I find it quite hard to put into words. When you go into a house, with a haunted house, you feel uncomfortable. I get like this cold, leaden weight in my stomach. It just feels wrong, weird and wrong. That feeling is like, you know, when you're really, really nervous about something? The most important thing to remember, though, is whether you can tell or not, that I reckon it's always a good idea to start off in any new house or residence that you happen to be in by offering a little bit of milk, a little bit of honey, and talking as if there were a spirit there. Now, if there's not, then what have you done? You've wasted a thimbleful of milk and honey and you felt like an idiot for a minute. Is that a big price to pay for potentially heading something off? I don't think so, personally. I've lived by this rule for years now, and it's always stood me in really, really good stead. Give it a go. Right, we're going to move on to the positive bit. Here comes the positive bit. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I have been in bits reading the comments on my last video. I'm hugely grateful to everybody that's come by, watched it, subscribed. I could not have asked for a better reaction. I feel a bit guilty, actually, if I'm honest, that I've got a huge load of subscribers and gained attention from something I wish didn't need attention. I wish this situation wasn't happening, and I wish that people didn't feel scared. I wish that other people didn't feel the need to minimise fears. So I've been in bits reading the comments from last week's video. The one thing that it shows, I think, is that there's far more of us being worried and caring about each other and wanting to look after and build our communities than there are of them who are hateful, unpleasant people. I love that. If you want to know the numbers, I believe when I last checked, middle of last week, it was like 98% of people were doing a thumbs up and 2% of people were doing a thumbs down. I like those odds. I like those odds quite a lot. So you're not alone. There's 98% of us out here and we've all got each other's backs. So my little resolution is to put as little money into billionaires' pockets as possible. And so last weekend, Mr. Grumpy Old Crony and I went out, and because we needed a few things, he was being a grown up and had to go and visit the optometrist. So he went off to do that, and we went to a little, I believe in America you call them a mom and pop restaurant. Over here it's just like a little independent chain. It's not a chain, it's an independent. I think there's only one of them. And we went and had our brunch there. I had a very nice bagel with smoked salmon and avocado. Yum, yum, yum. Very nice indeed. And from there we had to go and buy some chain for a project that Mr. Grumpy Old Crone is making. He has a little side hustle doing like leather armour for ritual and cosplay and things like that. It's very cool. At one point I'll show you, but today's not that day. But it is very cool. But he needed some chain. So instead of getting into the car and driving, we decided we would walk quite a way, but we walked to the hardware store, and that was great. And we walked past one of my favourite charity shops, and I just popped my head in, and they had a tiny brass cauldron. I've been looking for one of these for ages, and they had one. It's kind of like I suppose it's more like a coal scuttle, but it's cauldron enough for me. So I've polished that all up, and that's going to go onto my altar to burn incense in. So I'm very excited about that. Wanted one of those for ages, and I got it from a charity shop, which means the money that I paid for it will go to support my local hospice, which is one of those things that I support anyway, as many members of my family have used their services in the past. So that's great. So then we walked further and further into town. We saw nice people, and it was great. And we got to the hardware store and we bought the thing that we needed, which was the chain for the leather stuff that Chris was making. Oh, Chris, Mr. Grumpy Old Crone. There you go. His name is Chris. So if you hear me discussing Chris, Mr. Grumpy Old Crone. So we got that chain, and on my way out, I discovered that they were having a seed sale, and so I managed to buy all the stuff that I needed to start planting and growing things in my back garden, and they were all 50% or less, and it was the end of season stuff, and they were all English sourced seeds as well. So get in. I got loads for not very much money at all. I was very, very happy about that. So I've come home, I've got a little brass cauldron, got a whole load of seeds, Mr. Grumpy Old Crone's got all the stuff he needs for his craft project. The job was, quite frankly, a good one. And this weekend, Imulk weekend, I have got out into the back garden and I have started doing some work out there. So I'm going to put some videos of some of this stuff up online as well. I haven't done everything yet, but I will do. I took a video of the beforehand yesterday. It looked bad out there. But spent a whole day out there yesterday, and it was kind of like a form of worship for me because I am a guyist, and I've managed to get a few things out of pots and into the ground, which feels really good for me because the ground, that's where things should be planted. I know a lot of people can only work in pots because of where they are, but for me, because I'm lucky enough to own the house I live in, I can pull things up and plant into the ground. So we're pulling up paving slabs with Mr. Grumpy Old Crone helping me because there's no way they were so heavy. I managed to get those up, put them in. I've got raised beds coming along. I had a really good burn. I do like burning things. Love it. And you know, it's Imulk, why not? It's, you know, I know not everything's a fire festival, but it is if you're me. Everything's a fire festival if you're me. Love setting fire to things. So that's all good. And it's starting to come together and look really, really good out there. And the agoraphobic chickens are having a bit of a run around as well. Dion and Doreen, they're quite happy. And they'll be even happier now that I'm digging up more ground because there's more grubs and worms for them. Happy, happy chickens. So, on the whole, quite positive. I hope that you're feeling a little bit more positive this week than you were last week. And with that in mind, I'm going to give you a little bit of a challenge. Try and do one thing this week which makes somebody else smile. A nice thing. Okay? Maybe it's putting some coins into a collection tin somewhere for a charity, a nice charity that you agree with. Maybe it's buying a bag of kibble for a homeless person with a dog, because if there's one thing I know about homeless people with dogs, it's that they'll go hungry before the dog does. So do something for the dog. Why not? Maybe give them a sandwich as well if you're feeling particularly generous. That'd be a nice thing as well. Do something nice for the community that you live in. In a world of cruelty and separation, kindness is a radical act. Let's be kind. I've got a wonderful friend in California called Kathy who has spent the last few years of her life devoted to the word kind, just doing kind things for other people and encouraging other people to do kind things in return. And I think that's a really bloody lovely way to live your life. So yeah, kindness. Let's do it.